So this is your final task before completing the Mastery Badge assessment. And at the end of this video, you will be asked to upload an example of your preferred note-taking strategy, offering evidence of its usefulness. That's the key. So most of your work in the note-taking module has been centered around this double entry organizer. Let me pull up my pointer. And we have been working with these two category headings the entire time and working on refining your skills in extracting things like key information, big ideas, and more importantly, how you think about it. So the questions you ask, the connections that you make, the opinions that you form about the things that you're learning. So you have submitted multiple sources of evidence that show you understand how to use this strategy with these two headers in place. Okay. You also are familiar with this rubric, and to get your intermediate badge, you focused on this accomplished column, and you will recognize that that key information, those thoughts, questions, and connections, those were the headers of our double entry organizer, that those exist inside of our rubric. For your mastery badge, of course, we have to move from the accomplished column to the exemplary column. And so we're going to focus our energy today on this column, particularly these two areas: manipulation of notes for further use and self-advocacy. And this is really about being able to flex your notes around in a way that makes them useful for you, that you know how to adapt note-taking depending on the content that you're learning about, the context that you're in. Is it a movie? Is it a book? Is it an article? Is it a web page? And then that's important, but also being able to explain why that particular manipulation of the notes is effective for the context that you're in and for you as a learner. Okay? So I want you to keep those two rows in mind as we move forward with our work. Okay? So all of the work that we've done with the double entry organizer within those fixed categories has been really to train your brain. We want to train your brain so that the notes you take actually work for you. Because if you spend all your time taking notes, but then you don't know what to do with them afterwards, you've wasted a lot of time. And it took a lot of people. It took me so long to learn this. So be glad that you're figuring it out now, because I got all the way through college and I still didn't know how to make my notes work for me. So learning it early and practicing it often is critically important. Okay? We are going to look at some samples and consider how the note takers have manipulated their notes. There's that word, manipulated their note taking to serve them best given the content that they're studying and the context that they're in. And while we look, I want you to keep those two categories of our rubric in mind. How did they manipulate the notes for the context in which they're working? And how might they be able to advocate that that was the best tool to use or the best strategy to use given the circumstances? Okay, so let's look at a few. So this particular two-column double entry organizer, the note taker has reframed the columns so that this particular column can be around words that the author is actually writing about. And I think this is, yes, this is a novel. So this is taking extractions from the text verbatim and dumping them into this column. But then we still have this section over here about what do I think about all of this stuff that this author is saying, and how am I making connections between this passage and this passage and this passage? So this column doesn't change too much, but this one sort of does. All right, this is a math example. So you can see again, this person has manipulated these columns to serve the content area that they're in. So we have concepts, facts, and information in the left column, and we have examples and things to remember in this column. The other thing I want to point out about this is that your notes are going to take on the symbol system of the particular discipline that you're in. So in this case, it's math. So these notes are going to look different than they would look in a science classroom or a language arts classroom or a visual arts classroom. Okay, so don't be afraid to manipulate the tool to serve the symbol system that you're working within. This person has taken main ideas from the text and then used the right column to tease those out and pull out the details that are important to them. So a little bit of a different strategy in that there's not as much room here for what they're thinking about it, but it does require them to tease things apart, which makes you think. Another example of using the symbols of the discipline. So in this case, it kind of looks like there are 3 columns here. This is really, the symbol and word go together. So this is a treble clef, and that's the word that it represents. So even though it looks like 3 columns, trust me, it's 2. So we've got symbols and words on, whoops, there it went backwards. We've got symbols and words on the left side, and then meaning on the right side. So a bit of a departure in that this is really for technical vocabulary. There's not a ton to think about when you're dealing with vocabulary, but it's important. You have to know these symbols and you have to know these ideas within this discipline. So if it came down to being tested on particular vocabulary, you need a way to organize it. And this is how this note taker chose to do it. Another example of pulling quotes and using your own thinking, responding in the right-hand column with the thoughts that are occurring to you as you're hearing the quotes or you're reading the quotes. This one, I think this is super smart. As they've gone down and listed the quotes, they're putting the page numbers that it came from, which is a really handy tip that will serve you well after the fact. And remember, we want to be able to use our notes. We want them to be useful for us to study with. So if you aren't organizing them in a way that your brain will remember and attach it to the information that you're studying, it's a waste of your time. So having little tricks like this, putting your page numbers down the margins of your page, super smart. Okay, so of course a double entry organizer is not the only way that notes can look. The skills that you use in the double entry organizer will translate into all different kinds of note-taking strategies, and that could be visual in nature. So this is an example of a visual note-taking strategy. Some people use different colors when they take notes because it helps them remember what that piece of information looked like on the page. Some people combine visual and written information. I mean, in this example, I feel like there's as much visual, as many visual cues as there actually is text. So for that learner, that was an important processing tool for them. This is a way I like to take notes. I like to highlight key ideas or phrases, underline things, circle big ideas, and then I use the margins of my pages to do that right-hand column of our DEO. I use those margins to think about, what do I think about that? Or to jot down the details of a particular thing so I don't have to read back through the bulky text. So this whole markup of text is critically important if you do it well. If you're the kind of person who highlights the whole thing, that's not going to serve you well. That's why that left column, being able to extract the most important words, the most important content. Once you know how to do that, then you can do this effectively, okay? Same thing with sticky notes. A lot of people use sticky notes, especially if you can't mark in an actual text. Some people will use a laminated page over the top of their notes so that they can. Obviously, if you're working online, you have all kinds of note-taking tools that you can use online. But if you are working in a book that you can't mark up, sticky notes is a great solution. And it allows you to do exactly those categories. Put on main ideas, details, big vocabulary words, concepts, ideas that you need, and then to record those questions that you have for follow-up. And just sticker all over your text. Another example of words with visuals. This looks like a more traditional note-taking option and maybe a synthesis here at the bottom of how all of that comes together. And then this is a science example, and it looks again like we have traditional kind of written notes, and then we have some sort of symbol system that's representative of the discipline. So toggling back and forth between those, given the context, is important. Okay, So the bottom line, you must be able to determine which style of note-taking serves both you and the content. And to achieve your mastery badge, you must be able to articulate how you've manipulated the note-taking strategy and how it is effective. So you are going to need to upload evidence of your preferred note-taking strategy on whatever piece of text or whatever source you're choosing to demonstrate the strategy with. You're going to upload your notes and then also upload an explanation of the benefits of using that particular strategy given who you are as a learner, the context, the content, etc. And once you have completed that task, you may proceed to the final mastery badge assessment. And then you've got it. Good luck, guys and gals.